And things often boil down to relationships. I've worked with a lot of senior leaders that feel like and sort of have been conditioned that they think they need to have all the answers. That's what the leader is. The leader has the answers. And nothing could be further from the truth. The leader is like a conductor of an orchestra. They're not playing an instrument necessarily. They're orchestrating and coordinating the instruments and the play so it can be beautiful music. And so a lot of the work ends up being in that sort of vein and that sort of space, is just reorienting leaders to become more relational and less sort of the rugged individualistic ideal of the 50s, to where, oh, I can actually say I don't know. I can actually ask my team what they think.
Your business's success depends on relationships. Relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponteau. Each week, I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Jonathan Reynolds. He is the founder and CEO of Mindful Life, Mindful Work Incorporated, a San Francisco-based leadership development company providing services that address the intersection of self-awareness and team performance. This company also supports mindful living, learning, and working via a mindful social media platform, a marketplace that supports creators of mindful products, annual summits, and events highlighting the importance of mindful approaches to life and work by creating mindful articles, audio, and video content. Congrats on supporting mindful learning, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Carl. It's wonderful to be here.
Now, I'm really excited to have you on the show because this is a topic that I'm seeing more people focusing on, with how fast and overwhelming the business world and life has gotten, how quickly things are changing, and how just stressful and burnt out people are getting. It does seem like people have forgotten how to be mindful and how to the importance of taking these breaks and pausing and being able to be more aware of what you're doing instead of just constantly running ragged along your kind of predetermined paths. So what are some of the ways do you recommend people start applying mindful self-awareness to solve some of these issues and kind of decompress from all the stress they're under?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. One of the things that I think has been really useful and that Mindful Life, Mindful Work has done over the years is making things accessible and applicable. Sometimes we get excited about something and we want to do it to the nth degree, but often that's the reason people fail in the early stages. So we're really looking for simple ways to integrate it. And, it might sound silly, but starting with meditating 1 minute a day, and people say, well, that's sort of funny, like I can do 5 minutes. But when we say something like, well, can you do 1 minute a day every day for a year? It's a little less funny. Then there's a recognition that you're really building in a practice that's sustainable and new habits. So we like to start really small. And the same is true with client engagement. We don't want to come in and get a huge contract. We want to start small and get to know each other and grow into something more robust and inclusive. So things take time. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of Mindful Life, Mindful Work is let's ease into it in an organic way. And the reason mindful and mindfulness is let's just not do more. Let's not add an extra thing to do. Let's just slightly up level the things we're already doing with some mindful attention and the things that bring us back to our humanity. And that's part of the reason we connected.
Yeah, I like that idea of making small changes that build those habits, because I think a lot of people, I really agree that when you try to make big drastic changes to your life or dive in headfirst to a new thing, your brain is wired to resist those sort of big changes because it sees it as a threat, and it's used to surviving in its current state, and so it sees that as safe, even if you intellectually it's not good for you because you want to make a change. But just understanding that you need to make these small incremental changes to build new habits and rewire your brain along a better path, and that those little things I think are really important because it also it gives people to test things out, because it might be, oh, that sounds really cool in a moment, but then isn't actually a good fit for you. But if you dive in head first, it's hard to get back out of the pool versus dipping a toe in. So it's the sort of thing that seems so counter to the way people are often living their lives or running businesses and which is basically pedal to the metal, full speed ahead, no small actions, got to get things, big changes, big impact. But that doesn't like equate to actual success in the way people think it will.
Yeah, I mean, are you looking for a quick fix? And maybe you are because you're in a painful place in this moment. But if you want something sustainable, it's going to take small changes over time and for you to grow into a new way of being. And so a lot of the starting point is in bringing attention to the body, because the body is where we're most human. And so grounding into the body. So one of the things that's spending time on tech all day, which many of us do, myself included, but if we forget about the body and we don't take breaks to nurture the body, and sometimes that's just a small food break, but it can also just be walking around the building and getting some fresh air. It's like, how do you build those things in so you're not waiting till the end of the day to be human, so you can be human throughout the day.
Yeah, I think for leaders that are very much, especially like a startup founder or someone who's trying to grow a company, which it can be very much an all-encompassing endeavor and really eat up a lot of their personal time and stuff. Especially if they have struggle with boundaries, that so many people do. That they're building those habits in to take those breaks, to go on that walk, to get outside and while it might seem like, oh, that's time I'm not able to be productive or make progress on your goals, whatever the narrative is that people have been telling themselves, it's really enables the productive elements to be more productive because you're not burnt out, you're not overwhelmed, you're not wearing yourself down. And again, there's the results you want are not going to be from a single sprint. It's going to be from a marathon, from a long-term sustained effort. And you can't sustain it if you're burning by the candle on both ends all the time.
Yeah, well put. I mean, that's a metaphor I often use, is you're not running a sprint, you're running a marathon. And if you want to reach the goal, you need to pace yourself, not in a way that diminishes the moments of effort, but like you said, actually enhances them, because you're able to fully arrive, because you're not burnt out. All time is not created equal. All effort is not created equal. It's like, we want the best of ourselves. We need to care for ourselves at the human level so we can show up in that way.
And I think it's interesting that what a lot of people in like executive roles or that are running companies, the things that they're finding they're struggling with when it comes to being leaders, when it comes to connecting with their teams and inspiring them and communicating the mission and getting people aligned, or the sort of skills that are built during those quote unquote non-productive times, those breaks, those walk around the building with one of your direct reports and talking to them about non-work things, or the meditative moments where you're just thinking about yourself and analyzing your own thoughts and feelings and getting connected with yourself, and all these things that people see as the non-productive, there's not a lot of ROI to these things, are actually the sort of habits that if they built it, they'd get more from the times that they are quote unquote productive, not just because of they're more refreshed, but also they're have better relationships with themselves and the people they're working with, which compounds the efforts they all put in towards the business or the work, because now they're all in better alignment and have better connections around the work instead of just forcing things through the pipeline with a lot more friction.
Yeah, I mean, there's all those relational benefits. We learn better when we're in a state of ease versus a state of stress. And so creative problem solving, all sorts of things, up level. So for instance, I like metaphors. So it's as if you're banging your head against a wall trying to get through the wall. Well, if you take 20 steps back, you see over to the side, there's a door that you never would have seen because you were too close to the wall. And the same sort of thing with our challenges. When we step away from them, we come back stronger. We all know the experience of being in the shower and having an insight to something that we weren't even thinking about. Well, that's because we gave ourselves a space. But we have to trust that giving ourselves space is not only a skillful approach, but it's also safe. We're not going to fall behind because we give ourselves space. we're actually going to become more efficient.
Yeah, I like that wall head banging metaphor. That's kind of funny. I step back and see there's a door. I can stop banging my head against the wall. That's a great example. But I love hearing more about. I'm sure we work some clients that have been the ones banging their head against that wall, and then they start. But what are some of the examples you can share of this actually in practice that people can relate to?
You know, it's interesting. Most of my work over the years has been with individual leaders of teams and departments. And I'm also trained and licensed as a therapist, although not practicing. And so I sort of consider my approach and the mindful approach to be very relational. And things often boil down to relationships. I've worked with a lot of senior leaders that feel like and sort of have been conditioned that they think they need to have all the answers. That's what the leader is. The leader has the answers. And nothing could be further from the truth. The leader is like a conductor of an orchestra. They're not playing an instrument necessarily. They're orchestrating and coordinating the instruments and the play so it can be beautiful music. And so a lot of the work ends up being in that sort of vein and that sort of space, is just reorienting leaders to become more relational and less sort of the rugged individualistic ideal of the 50s, to where, oh, I can actually say I don't know. I can actually ask my team what they think. And that does so many things. One is it opens up all these other ideas. But the other thing is it makes people feel valued and included in a way that they actually want to bring their value. What happens with a lot of top performers is they stop performing because they don't feel valued. They're either not recognized, they're not asked. Most of the company has all these amazing ideas that you can't bring them all into the fold, of course. You have to have somebody be a decision maker, but without tapping that resource. So a lot of the work that I've done with leaders is sort of to make it safe to do that, because often they're taught it's not safe to do that. And it's like the good to great model. What takes somebody from being a really good leader? Well, you can be a really good leader if you're super smart. Okay, that's fine. But you can't be a really great leader just based on intelligence. You have to find these other qualities, these very human qualities, because you're not leading computers, you're leading people. And to do that is a psychological act. It's not solely an organizational or a logistical act. It's how do you bring the best out of people?
Yeah, I love that. The conductor metaphor is something that actually one of the episodes that's dropping this week is talking about using that with in regards to using AI agents and tools, understanding how like you need to still be paying attention, but you can't be the one doing all the work. It's the same thing with teams. Yeah, the whole idea that the leader has to be the one with all the ideas, all the answers, just puts so much effort on and stress on the leader themselves, because they're the kind of single point of failure. And so if they're not there, then nothing gets done, because they're the one who has to make all the decisions and has to have all the answers, and their team isn't empowered to make those calls and move things forward without checking with them first. And it's funny also, as I just said that, I remember that I got another episode dropping this week, is one about how that actually undermines the value of the business, because if the founder is the one making all the decisions and in charge of everything, and they try and sell it to someone else, like that's not really something that can sell to someone else or be acquired, because they just built a job around themselves, a cage around themselves, because if they're not there, the business, nothing happens, because no one else on the team has been empowered or has the authority to make those decisions and make those calls or bring those ideas to the table. So it's the leaders that think, oh, I have to have all the answers, I have to be the one that makes all the decisions, I have to use this model of, like I said, the 1950s leadership. It just undermines everything they're working on, because like I said, they're going to be losing top talent, and then the actual value of the business is super undermined, because if they get sick or they try and leave or try and sell it, then the value goes with them and doesn't get transferred over. And so it's interesting how that belief, which is so like prevalent and kind of invasive and hard to weed out from a lot of the current executives, is actively undermining their own success.
Yeah. Yeah, that tendency to, I mean, It's not even necessarily done deliberately, but to self-isolate, and then you're isolated. And I think there's sort of this carrot that says, well, if all the weight's on you, then you get to take all the credit too if it works out well, which is never true. Nobody does anything alone. And we're all supported by the people that put the food in the grocery stores, the people that put the gas in the gas pump, and all of these things. We don't do that ourselves. Somebody did that for us. And we can say, yes, I pay for those things, so I did it. But no, you didn't. A society supported you in supporting yourself. And so the same is true in a company. It's not actually a company or an organization if there is just one person who is doing all the things. It's they brought a support team, sort of an admin staff, which might be thousands of people. But if they don't actually delegate and actually share that responsibility, then you're exactly right. When they're gone, the thing's gone. They're really a solopreneur.
Yeah, and it's interesting how big a company can get that is basically a giant, like a single solopreneur with a huge kind of stack of cards underneath, a huge house of cards underneath them. And then the minute that they're disrupted or they are get sick or burn out or injured or want to leave, then everything else just falls apart because it's not really a company where the staff are empowered, and it's unfortunate how common that those are. And I think the culture, you mentioned that no one does anything alone. I'm a big advocate for the opposite of that. The idea that there's like this self-made millionaire, that whole thing is just a super harmful myth, especially in our culture. And I think people are too quick to idealize the founders and the CEOs, the ones at the top seem to be super smart and successful, but it's like all their teams and the people behind the scenes doing the actual work that make it happen. And it's unfortunate how people get so fixated on just a single person at the top when it's really not their responsibility or not their work that's actually getting all the impact made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's value in an idea. There's value in a beginning. It's challenging to get something started from nothing. That should be acknowledged. And the more I learn as I get older is ideas are cheap and easy. It's execution that is actually the bigger challenge. And of course, the founder has to contribute to the execution and be strategic and make decisions. But who's doing all that executing over time too? And once you get to the maintenance level of a business where it's just growing slowly or stable, founders are often doing very little at that point. And again, there should be value acknowledged given the beginning. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to see where we place value. We still want the hero, right? We want somebody who's like the Superman. Well, we all have that potential. And so just because a few found the right time, and it really is mostly about timing when you hit market with stuff.
Yeah.
It's, great ideas are in the air. There's a little bit of luck to it too.
Yeah. I remember seeing a TED talk that there's this group did a bunch of research on and to figure out what was the common factor that contributed to a business's success, a startup success or failure. And the biggest factor was time, which is basically equates to luck, where a couple of years before, like Uber, there was a company that pitched the same sort of thing, but the smartphone technology didn't exist yet, so it failed. And so, if you looked at the pitch deck, it was like the exact same model. It just Uber did it a couple of years later once the technology existed better. So just these things that people see as, oh, they're super smart and successful, they must have been these like amazing heroic figures. It's like, well, they had a similar idea. They just got lucky with the timing, and then they had the team around them that could execute things, and so it worked out. But it's not the heroic story that people think, and it's not nearly as easy to wrap your head around as the successful solopreneur that so many people think they have to be in order to be worthy of respect and admiration. When in reality, if you're the leader who's empowering your team and giving recognition and mingling with them and building these relationships, and they're going to have a lot stronger sense of respect and admiration for you than if you're trying to be that person on the pedestal that is kind of aloof and not connected with anyone on a real level.
Yeah. I mean, there'll always be some power dynamic and some stratification, of course, across layers in a company. But you don't want to undermine the humanness to do that. I mean, even in my work with clients, I sometimes make a distinction between personal and personable. And they don't need to know a bunch of personal information about me to feel connected to me, but I do need to show up in a human way. So there's a personable quality that we can connect as people.
Yeah, I really like that distinction. It's important to kind of balance that between the kind of oversharing or kind of toxic authenticity that some people try and replace that personable side thing with and think it's still going to work. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Jonathan. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a review, and subscribe. If you want to learn more about myself or Jonathan, check out the links in the show notes. And no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.